Hi, it's Jen from Shabby Fabrics with a really fun and practical project for you today. This is the Insulated Lunch Box. This is a brand new product from June Taylor. And if you've seen our videos before, you've seen the Quilt As You Go projects, a lot of fun. Well, they continue to create new things. And this time, I love that there's this adorable lunch tote. I've done this in a fun one for the kids, Unicorn Kingdom by Riley Blake. I've also have this in Sweet Beginnings, a new collection coming in from one of the newest designers at Maywood Studio, and then Secret Stash in the Warm Tones by Laundry Basket Quilt. So you can see that there's a lot of options and how practical. I bring my lunch to work every single day. No more brown bags, no more plastic bags. I'm now going to be putting my lunch in here, and it's going to be keeping it nice and cold. I love that it's insulated. I'm going to give you some options of things that we discovered through the process of making these three things. You can see I adjusted where my straps were here. I'll talk to you about that as we dive deep into the tutorial and why I chose that option. We also will be going over the option of the zipper here. It has nothing covering it. It's just what's called the zippity-doo-dah zipper, but I'm going to show you how to cover that with fabric and do a fun little accent here. I did that in the gingham, which I thought was a lot of fun. So I'll be going over that. This is a longer tutorial, so we'll try to break that up into chronological steps from beginning to end. If you have to stop and come back and finish at another time, that's great. Just know though, it's worth watching it through, and that way you can just make yours and you already know your options and you can decide on what you want to make your lunch tote in. Of course, we're going to want to know what that is. We're going to want to see that. Now, June Taylor, what they're doing in their kit. Let's go over what the kit is going to look like. You'll of course get this insulated lining. You can kind of hear this. That's the insulating portion, and that'll be for one bag. What will also be coming inside your kit, of course, are instructions, strapping for the handles, and then, depending on which kit you grab, one of 6 color zippers. They have white, black, a red, a navy blue, kind of a taupey color, and I think they're calling that camel, and a gray. So you would be able to pick out whichever one of those kits is going to work best for your fabric collection. So once you decide that, the process, of course, is going to be the same no matter what color you choose. Now let me show you one of the cool things about the zippity-doo-dah zippers. First off, zippers intimidate me. I'm just going to make a true confession about that, but that's June Taylor did something really cool, and they made this flange here so that once we prepare our fabric, I'm jumping ahead, all we have to do is sandwich that in between there and stitch it down. This makes putting a zipper in an absolute no-brainer, so that even if you've never put one in before, this can be your first one. You'll absolutely have complete success, and I'll be going over that. So that's why they did that, and I thought that was a pretty clever idea on their part. Okay, we're going to dive right in. I'll just keep the one that I'm going to be remaking with us today is going to be this one. And what I'll do, this straps go all the way down and around, just like this one does. And you know what? Let me show you something else inside. I'm going to show you why a little bit later on. I'm going to give you the option of, if you don't want that strap going all the way down and around, because it comes up all the way in the middle here, and it can be quite a bulky seam in the middle. For that reason, by the way, I'm going to be using the Schmetz 100/16 denim needle. This is meant to be going through a lot of density. So I've already put that inside my machine. If you don't already have a jeans or denim needle, a size 100/16, just grab a pack of those. You don't want to break a needle in the middle of this project, of course. So by putting our straps up a little bit higher here on this bag like I did, it avoided the strapping coming into that seam in the bottom. So that's the only reason I wanted to show you that option today. But let me take the other two off the table, and we'll just be focusing on this one here because we'll be recreating that. So our step 1 included in the instructions, and we can look at our batting. quite long. No need to iron that. You know, as you're working with it, it'll naturally smooth out for you. So the very first step they'd like us to do, and they even say do not iron directly on the insulated batting, set iron at medium wool setting for ironing on the fabric when layered with the insulated batting. So we already know that when we do get ready to iron, we'll go ahead and put that on a probably a medium setting on this one, medium to a warm setting. Cut around the pattern printed on the insulated batting, leaving an inch all the way around. So you could just grab any size ruler and put that on here and just leave a 1-inch buffer all the way around. You've got the front of the bag and you've got the back of the bag. So you're going to repeat that step. You'll have 2 fabrics. In fact, I'm just going to cut those apart real quick, just so that I'm only working with one, just for space reasons. That'll be helpful for me and less clutter for you to be seeing on the table. So first thing we would do is you have 2 pieces of fabric. This is a great project for half-yard cuts. You'll need a half a yard. You could do that with fat quarters. If you didn't mind that these 2 halves had different, you could even do this with a fat quarter project. Basically, you will take your half yard and simply cut it at the fold. This is a fat quarter right now. You can cut that down to the 16 by 20 as they recommend, but there's really no reason to, because once, I'm just going to quickly eye that 1 inch. By the way, that 1 inch around is not critical by any means. They just want you to leave a bit of a buffer around there. But let me just cut that quickly so that I can show you our next step. You'll layer those fabrics. And by the way, if you have a directional fabric, as we do here, be mindful of that. So looking here on this side, see our bird is right side up. So in this instance, let me go ahead and let's just address that fabric first. So our bird, let's turn that around. So of course we want the top of the bag to be here. So let's look at our batting real quick before we start layering. So this is the top edge. So make sure if you do have a directional fabric that this is right side up. Go ahead and bring these now right side together and make sure that when you layer this, that that's at the top zipper edge so that your motif is right side up. That makes sense. Go ahead and pin in position, and per our instructions, we will sew on the dashed line, leaving the top edge completely open. So once this is pinned, we'll sew here, stop in those corners, come all the way around, and you'll go ahead and stop there. Now the solid lines are what you'll be cutting on. They do mention to back stitch at the beginning and end to secure as you would expect. One thing that we know when we cut this out is we had to, especially in these little corners here, we had to cut in just a little bit when we went ahead and turned it through. Otherwise, it kind of puckered in those corners. So you are stitching all the way around and cutting on those lines, but before you turn that through, go ahead and cut just a little bit, almost all the way to the corner, but not quite. Here and here, and again here and here. And then you will turn that all the way through. Obviously, all of this bulk would have been cut away. We completely had to use our point turner to get these out, as you can imagine. I've already done that step ahead of time, so let me just show you where we are now in our project. And we even jumped ahead and just put some quilting in. This is already a very long video, but let's pretend that the quilting wasn't here and we've just turned that through. This is those areas where we really got in there with our point turner at the top and had to push those out, even in these, really all of these corners. Once that's done, we're over here now, you're going to want to add some quilting. We just found our center, and with a light colored fabric, you can use a friction pen and a straight edge to go ahead and draw your line, or on a dark pen, you might want to use a chalk pen. Then again, we used, moving to the right, just an interval that we liked. It was 1.5 inches, and we just kept drawing lines and drawing lines. And again to the left, and we just sewed on a coordinating thread. Of course, you're going to be seeing that. You repeat that for the other piece of our batting, because we noticed that there's 2 pieces. So that's our inside and that's our outside. And of course, that's our top. Notice our bird motif is right side up because we were careful about that. We already covered that. Go ahead and put that aside for now, and let's talk about the straps. So the straps they're each cut to 4 inches. I've got one of them done, but let me go ahead and bring out one that isn't completed. So they have us cut those straps to 4 inches by 36. Now that's assuming that you're going to go ahead and have that strapping go all the way down around the bag and even up inside in that center seam that I showed you. If you don't want to do that and you want your straps to begin a little bit higher, I shortened that length by 9 inches and I cut them to 27. So that's up to you to decide, or maybe you have a different length you want. So you can decide on that. Maybe you want this handle to be longer and you still want that to start here. Then maybe you're not going to trim any of this away and maybe your handles are up here. So you can decide on how you want that, where the straps to begin and the length of that strap. Whatever you decide that length is, the process will be the same, and we'll start with our hot ruler where we measure in a full inch. And let me just demonstrate a hot ruler. That may be a new concept to you. You know, us trying to fold in an inch, I'm kind of eyeballing. I'd have to guess. Well, the beautiful part about a hot ruler is I don't have to guess at all because it's indicated. There's a quarter, there's a half, 3/4, 1, all the way up to 2.5. So let's just pretend that's a raw piece of fabric. We haven't done anything with it. I put that on my fabric, and then I roll the edge over, and I'm like, oh, nope, I'm not quite to my 1, which is right here. I just scoot it back. And then you just keep, and you're like, yep, that's my spot. What I love about hot rulers is I can iron right on them with the hottest of irons, and it's not going to damage anything because we can't do that with an acrylic ruler or it would melt. So that's the beautiful part about hot rulers. Both ends, you'll have that same 1 inch. Then you would simply fold to the middle and press to establish where's my center. Open that back up, fold the edges inward, just like that, and press again. That's how we prepared the strap, and that's before we put the strapping inside. Whatever length that you cut this to, the strapping is going to be cut just a little bit shorter, and it's easy to determine what that length is because we want our strapping to come just up to this, but not over top. Otherwise, when we secure that, it's too much bulk. You can imagine if the strapping was going up inside that center seam as well, it's way too much bulk. And that's why the strapping is only from this edge of where that fold is to that other edge. So let me go ahead and do that. You know what? I mentioned that I'm going to make mine, I'm going to actually make mine full because it's harder. I will make my strap go all the way into the center seam, so you're seeing that. That's the hardest way to do it. It's the most amount of bulk, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then just know if you want to have your strapping shorter, it's easier, and you'll just decide on where you want that to be and make sure it's at the same spot on both sides. So let's adjust our strapping. I like that they give me plenty of that so that I can decide where I want that to be. And based on what I'm seeing, I'm going to cut that right here. Pull that back so you can see that. I'm just going to cut that right to that edge, right there. Just put that in place. Under there. fold that in half. And you can kind of adjust it so that it's kind of, it doesn't go all the way to the edge completely. So you can kind of sandwich it so it's more in the middle, so that when we sew this closed, that strapping is kind of right in the middle. And let me show you the one that I've completed. And that's what we did here. We just went ahead and sewed on this edge. We didn't need to close this because this is caught inside the seam in the middle. If you are going to go ahead, as I showed you on the other bag, and have that start here, go ahead and close it and just stitch across that end as well. All right, so let me go ahead, load in my gold thread. I will stitch that down. We're going to need this for our next step. So I would, because you're going to see that, I had this loaded in, ready to go, but let's go ahead and sew those down just a little bit on either side, and when I get back, we'll move on to the next step. So I have one of the straps, and we're now going to be moving into our second page. We're up in this part here. I want to make sure that you're seeing that. So on the front main, make sure your outside is on top and right side up, and that, because this is the opening, they have a similar footprint. If you had a print that did not have a directional nature to it, it'd be very easy to get this flip-flop, but it's those raw edges that we want up. They have us measuring in by 6 inches, and go ahead and mark that. So if you have a dark fabric and you think that a friction pen, you would not see it. Now I'd probably be able to see that here because I have a kind of a pink flower here. But maybe over on this side, the 6 inches, it's dark there. That's where using a chalk marker is fantastic for that. I'll just go ahead and mark that. We will put our strap, that's where our strap will be nestled inside, and that's what they're showing you right here. We'll zoom in on that. That's the edge of the strap and inside. So let me demonstrate that, show you that to you. That's our line right here. Move my head out of the way. And our strap would be right here. Now look at this channel, right? Keep the 6 inches as a general guide. We just want to have some level of symmetry. So while that's where my line is, that would bias my strap kind of not really in the middle of that lane. I'm going to go ahead and just shoot for the middle of that lane right there. I think I like that a little bit better. So that's kind of your judgment. You know, if you're in the ballpark of 6, 5 3/4, that's fine. Just make it the same on both sides. That's all you want to make sure you're doing. We'll come around. Let's make sure we don't get any twist in the strap. That's our next line. Same thing. You know, I'm not going to go on the inside. I'm just going to kind of straddle that lane. This will depend on the quilting you do, the spacing you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and put that right like that. And I'm using my flower head pins on this. Those patchwork pins that I love so much for piecing are just not strong enough. We use them because they have a nice light gauge to them. Move that over a touch. But they would bend in this with this much strapping and the fabric, and of course this batting that's inside, batting like material, whatever that's called. Now from the top, because of course we need to anchor this at the top, this is where they say to measure down 3.5 inches, and I'd recommend you just get a ruler, kind of flatten this out at the top, get your straps all lined up, and put that right here's so that's my half, 1.5, 3.5. I'm going to lay that down across the top of both of them at the same time and mark them. That way we have symmetry versus trying to just mark one at a time, here and here. Now, inside our pattern, they talk about sew an X at the top of the straps to reinforce. If you want to go ahead and draw that X, you can just come down a touch, draw it, and you could be very specific if you wanted. I think that's about an inch right there. And draw that again, and draw that X, because that may be something you've never done before, or you're uncomfortable kind of just eyeballing it. If you're comfortable just eyeballing it, great. We're just going to be reinforcing those straps at the top with that X. We don't need to do this at the bottom because that's going to be caught up in our seam allowance. If you are going to be doing the shortened version of that, and that's up on the bag. In fact, let me grab that bag. I want to show that to you real quick on here. I did do the X on both of those spaces. So if you are doing the shorter version like I did on this one, the Sweet Beginnings bag, you'll be doing the X 4 times on this side, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, and this, of course, the same on the opposite. So I'll keep that handy for us to reference. And I'm just going to draw that line. Now we will start sewing. I have a 1D in there. I have my gold thread, and I'm going to try to just stitch right over top of where I had already stitched my strapping closed. When I come up here, I'm going to come across, trying to come across here, 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 one more time, and then back down that lane. That's all we're trying to get accomplished, and we'll repeat that with the other side of the strap, and of course on the other half of the bag, same exact steps. Now that I've sewn the straps on, I would of course do that a second time, and it's exactly, of course, the same, and we're at this stage now. This is when the zipper comes into play, and I definitely found the strap was in my way. It kept wanting to flop back, so you might want to just use a flower head pin, pinning that out of place for the next step. This is where you can decide if you want to have a covered zipper, as is shown here, or the other one where it's just the plain zipper. So I will show you. As I said, these zippers come it's quite a lot of zipper. And let me grab that other bag back. I want you to see that. It's a lot of the zipper flange. You would just be seeing, this is a finished edge, so you don't need to worry about that, but you'd just be seeing a lot of the zipper. So if that's your plan, no matter whether you're going to do the covered zipper, which is what I'll be showing you today, or you decide to do that, we want to make sure that we do what's kind of called a bar tack over here, so that that zipper pull doesn't go sliding off our zipper, and now we're in a real conundrum. So what I'd recommend you do, I'm sewing today on the BERNINA 770. I have a 1D foot, and I've set my stitch width to 7.7 and my length to 1. And I'm just going to be showing you, we're right here in this pattern. I'm kind of jumping ahead. I really want you to do that step now, where I'm just going to hop across here with a nice big wide zigzag. So now I'm just going to hop to the left and to the right of the zipper. My presser foot is kind of straddling the zipper. And you can back stitch a couple times, and that's all you're trying to do. You're just trying to keep that slider, that zipper pull, from coming off. Now you repeat that on the other end. So let's go ahead. As I mentioned, I'm not working with that color zipper today. I have the gray one to try to pull out some of my grays in here. So let's put this aside for just a minute, and I want to show you that if you do decide to cover that zipper and add that kind of extra detail, you'll cut, this is not your instructions, this is just from Shabby Fabrics. We know the length of our zipper here is, oh, it looks like about 20 inches. So go ahead and cut a 1.5 inch wide by width of fabric strip in a coordinating fabric, and you can go ahead and cut that right at the fold, and you'll have 2 strips. Your hot ruler will come into play once again, and we will turn that edge under by 1/4 inch just on one side, and you'll be doing that for both of your strips that you cut that 1.5 inch wide strip in half. So go ahead, put your hot ruler down, and now we're just looking for that 1/4 inch and pressing that all the way down. Just keep going. Now I've done one ahead of time just to save us time, but that's again where that hot ruler comes into play, and it helps us get that nice accurate 1/4 inch versus us guessing where that 1/4 inch is. So that's this one that's just done. Now I've done half of my zipper already so you can see what we're doing. This is what we're going to be doing. What we found when we've already got our little bar tacks on the ends. What we found when we laid this down is we didn't want this to move. When we first were making the bag and we had that, we found it was kind of moving around. It just does. Even when we pinned it. So we went ahead and grabbed out the bone double face. This is basically a double-sided tape. This worked wonders for us. So we go ahead and lay that down where we want this to be. All the way down. Get that out of the way here. Well, this is sticky. This is very sticky. I like that. Going to help stuff not move. And go ahead and trim that and just give it a good press. Now you'll just take off the very top. Do that with my nail right there. And you'll peel that back, and then you see that shiny part? That's the sticky stuff. Now this will stay in our project forever, and that's no problem doing that. I'm going to put this, do you see the stitch line there when they sewed that flange on? I'm just trying to be consistently the same distance away from my zipper. You can choose what distance that is, whatever you like. This is by far the stickiest double-sided tape I've ever used. And I've used a couple different brands. This is fantastic. Some are stickier than others. This is exceptionally sticky. So just like that, and go ahead and give that a good press. Now this is where we'll change our stitch out. I'm just going to go back to my normal stitch. I'm going to reset my machine to where it should be, change out my zipper foot, and we'll adjust our zipper foot accordingly. And in fact, I'll do that with you so you can kind of see where I am, and I'm stitching just right along there. But here's the most important thing. You see how this has this is where you put your bag in. You must roll this back. You must roll that back, because if you sew this right now with that closed, you're going to sew it closed and won't be able to insert the bag. So you can either roll that back and just remember it's back there, or if you feel inclined to pin that away. But I'm going to roll mine back, and I know that's out of my way. So I'm at my machine now. I have my zipper foot, and of course my needle is coming right down the center. I know that I want to be sewing on that side, so I'll go ahead and I'm going to adjust my needle to the left. Looks like I'm -4 on that. I could probably do a -3. I'm going to go ahead and do a -4 on that. And I'm sewing with a 4D foot. And we're just going to try to keep that the same exact distance away. Now for what do we do with this raw edge? Well, I'm glad you asked me that. We are just going to fold that under and give a nice press all the way down. And I can see on this zipper, I think this one's just a little bit wider than the one I've used, the other one. If you even wanted to cut your strap, your width of fabric strip, I should say, to 1 3/4, you'd have even more to turn under back here. So that's an option for you as well. It's nice to have just a little bit of something extra to turn under. I think I did do that other one to 1 3/4 now that I think about it. Sometimes when we're developing a project, when we're doing these extra things that are not inside the pattern, you try one width and then you like, oh, that's a little bit too snug. So I think that we did end up cutting this one to a little bit kind of a chunkier 1 1/4, almost 1 3/4, but this will work. Again, we don't want to miss that. When we get ready to put our bag inside here, there's a lot going on. If you, again, want to kind of stabilize that edge, we can put the tape down once again. Now this time, we can even move that out of the way for just a moment. This time it's very, very close to the edge. You know, the double-sided tape, anytime I've done a project, and sometimes I just feel like I need an extra pair of hands, and that's the great part about double-sided tape. You can think of probably many times where it's like, I just need something to hold that down temporarily. That may be a good choice for you to use this double-sided tape for other projects. Okay, fantastic. And I'm going to cut off this little bit of extra down here. Now that that's here, our next step will be to insert our bag. Let's grab that. And we're just trying to get this all the way up into that wedge there. And I'm going to make that a little more balanced. So I have about the same amount overhanging there. Now again, if we felt like there's a lot going on, I'm worried about this backing out, I'm worried about that moving, I am going to go ahead on the bottom side because I don't want that to back away when I'm stitching this down and I miss the bottom. So I will again put on some more of this tape so that I know that bottom area is secure. For those of you that make a lot of bags and totes, this is probably not needed for you. You're comfortable using these tools, putting in zippers and whatnot. But for those of us where this is quite new, or we don't do this very often, these are things that help us be a little more confident with projects like this. And now I know that is not going to scoot away from me. When this comes down, you could certainly put tape again. I feel good about this because I can see this. I just can't see that back side. Now I'm going to use some flower head pins. Pinning that all together. I want to encourage you to get a healthy seam because it looks like this zipper is stacked right on top of the other. But if that rolled back ever so slightly and you only have 1/8 of an inch seam, you could miss that back there. So I'm going to go ahead and have a little bit of a chunkier, maybe not a full quarter, but something where it's not an eighth, because I've got to catch that back part to secure this whole thing. So I'm going to change out my presser foot one more time. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and sew this side on together. I'll do the opposite side and we'll keep assembling our lunchbox. So now, of course, for the opposite side of our bag, you naturally want to make sure you've got some good alignment. So I'm going to repeat that process where I am laying down my double-sided tape, setting my other half of my tote lunch box, I should call it, in there, where I'm making sure I'm straight across from here, pin, and I will again sew. And when I come back, we'll go ahead on to the next steps of boxing our corners and finishing up our lunchbox. So we have our bag looks like this so far. On our next step, we're up in the top right of our instructions. Unzip the zipper 1 to 2 inches. I have plenty of that. And we're going to turn our lunchbox so that the right sides are together. And so this is representing our zipper up here, our sides, and of course there's our bottom. It's nice that we've kind of have these quilting lines that help us line everything up. I might even just come in with some Wonder Clips right now, because we're going to now switch to 1/2 inch seam allowances from now till for this project till the very end, and just go ahead and clip, and we're going to sew that bottom 1/2 inch. Now this is where the bulk comes in. The straps are in here, that webbing in here. There's a lot going on. This is again where that chrome needle, the denim needle, you want that, and you want a presser foot that can plow through all of that quite nicely. So check your needle, make sure you've got a nice strong needle. I'll sew that to 1/2 inch. And they've asked us to press the seam open. If you just kind of push the bag on top of itself as best you can definitely be a little awkward. Just try to get in there. That's that bulk again. And if, as I mentioned, if you want that option of this handle here with it up above, then you'll avoid those straps being caught in that seam there. All together. You won't even be dealing with that. Okay, just press that open as good as you can. Refold the lunchbox so the bottom seam and the zipper are lined up. So we see our zipper here. Here's this, and we're just going to squish this kind of on top of itself, just like that, so our corners meet. And again, we can do our Wonder Clips both on this end. We don't want to trim the zipper off. I know you're wanting to do that. I wanted to do that. But the risk of trimming the zipper now, before we've sewed this 1/2 inch, is that if we lose track of our zipper, it could again slide all the way off, and now everything you've done is really lost. I don't know I've ever been able to get a zipper back onto the teeth ever successfully when one has come off inadvertently. So that's why just wait. Go ahead and sew that 1/2 inch seam here, and then you can go ahead and trim that off. Same on this end, line them up, wonder clip that, nice, press that open, 1/2 inch seam, trim that off. I'll go ahead and do that, and then when we come back, we will go on to our next step. I wanted to point out something here. On this end, no problem. My zipper teeth is closed, but we know our zipper is in the middle here. That means this is open. It's very important that you try to get them, the zipper track, where it's right there side by side. It's not overlapping. It doesn't have a gap. It's as if the zipper was closed. Of course, it can't be right now. So that's just something you want to finesse and make sure that when you approach this, that track is just side by side, like I said, as if the zipper were closed. We'll go ahead and do that together. All right, both ends have been sewn 1/2 inch. I trimmed, so yep, you have, looks like that on one end, that on the other, and press the seam open. That can be a little bit awkward, even if you want to just roll that one back. That's a lot of bulk. I'm on full hot for sure, even some steam, trying to roll that back on both ends. And now we'll move on to boxing our corners. So you can see if we just pull that like that, kind of press that open. That's why they wanted that open. We can put a wonder clip there. We'll do this on all 4 corners and sew 1/2 inch. So let me do this over here. Same thing. Don't be afraid to push the bag around a little bit to where you need it to be. And let's clip those things. Love my wonder clips. You know, I've found that crafting, creating things, it's either patchwork pins for quilting, piecing, flower head pins, and then, of course, the clover. I use that on every project because everything that I like a quilt needs binding, and I always use my wonder clips for that. But on really bulky projects like this, where I don't want to risk bending my pins, because this is a lot, even for a flower head pin, that's where these come into play. So grab yourself some of those. They're just, you're going to find more uses for them than you probably realize. And then over here, same again. Let's get that nice and balanced. Keep that open. Let's sew 1/2 inch seam allowances. I'll do one with you. We're not going to be trimming anything away after that. We'll be literally ready to turn our lunchbox out, and then I can talk to you about the liner that's inside there. What they've included inside their kit is a plastic liner that you can just put in the bottom of that. But if you wanted to cover that with fabric, I'll show you some options for that as well. So we have our 4 corners boxed, and now the part we've been waiting for to get to turn this through. Remember, you've got those pins in there, so you might want to grab those out. I definitely, when I was making one of the other bags, reached inside there, and that hurt. Those are sharp. So let's turn our bag through. So much fun. You could use your point turner if you want to get those points out, but you can get your hand in there, so that's really not a problem. Nice. How fun is that? Lunch in style. Just like that. And remember, they have the base, so you can just insert that in there and you're done, right? But if you want to go ahead, how cute this is. I love that. It's so much fun. But if you want to go ahead and have that be covered, again, these are not instructions. They're just some measurements that we came up with. I cut one strip, 7 inches wide by width of fabric. And then I just cut that to about 19.5 inches long. Because basically my idea was I just want to sandwich that thing inside. So I used my hot ruler, just turned that edge under 1/4 and 1/4 and stitched that on both ends, and then brought that right side together and sewed about 3/8 on the side. So that would look like this right here. Went ahead and did that. And we can just clip those corners right there. This is where you will want to use your point turner. I guess I can clip that one right there too. You can use your point turner to turn that through. And then get those corners out. And then we'll slip our base in. And you have a lunch tote. So how fun is that? I know it's been a longer video, but you can see this isn't difficult. They even say, June Taylor rates this as an easy project. There's just many steps along the way. But of course, if you're making them again and again, it'll get faster every single time. So we'll just insert our base in there. Just like that, it's nice and cute. Slip it inside. Add our lunch, and we're on our way. And again, this is insulated. So it should be keeping things that are cold, cold, and warm, warm. So there we have our adorable lunch box. So thank you so much. Hey, if you know somebody else, maybe a coworker, a family member that takes their lunch to work every day, just like I do, and maybe wants to be able to do that in style, or maybe that's a great gift for them. They're one of those types of people that's hard to buy for. This could be it. So thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you soon on another Shabby video.